Today's First Friday Forum was with Brian Glass, Senior Vice President of Grubb Ellis Harrison Bates. And it's an interesting statistic he brought to the group. You know, the national average for retail square footage on a per capita basis is 43 square feet. However, in the greater Richmond market, we are at 57 square feet. We're soon going to have 70 million square feet of retail space in our market. It's going to be a lot to absorb, and here's Brian to tell us how it's going to look.
With all of the projects currently in the construction pipeline, we expect that March 2008 through March 2009 period will see over 1 million square feet more than we had in 2003. The difference is that these projects will not have the sizzle that resulted in 2003 when the two upscale malls opened. Let's take a look at what all this additional space is going to mean for our market. Our vacancy rate at the end of 2007 was 6.1%. While this figure is not particularly high, there is an upward trend. This trend is going to continue in the next year, and I'm going to predict about a 7% vacancy rate 1 year from now. And if it is a 7% vacancy rate, I still think that's pretty good. Most of the country is seeing vacancy rates in retail that are higher than that. And so we've been pretty fortunate and pretty well insulated from the real highs and lows of the national economy. And that goes from the housing market to commercial construction. A good example of that's what's going on in Fort Lee. I mean, it's 7.5 million square feet of commercial construction, what's going on downtown with Midwest Vaco being built. And we see that all over the place. And, you know, commercial construction hasn't been hurt yet, but the pipeline is going to be affected at some point in time. It also puts upward pressure on construction costs when you have that much in the commercial pipeline. All that being said and done, if you notice that some of the rental rates that were being quoted coming online almost a year from now aren't that traumatic. They're not great. They put pressure on retailers, but it's not necessarily traumatic. Rising rental rates have flattened out, and I expect that trend to continue as well. I don't see that we're going to see much of an uptick in rental rates, except if you're on a prime location and a prime development. There's got to be moderation because, quite frankly, retailers can't just work for the landlords. They've got to be able to make a living. You can see from this slide that our per capita retail space is approximately 25% more than the national average. Our retail growth has been sparked by urban sprawl over the last decade. The sprawl will be slowed by a combination of state law, and a lot of that has to do with VDOT. There is a tremendous amount of additional time frame that's going to be added because of VDOT regulations on traffic impact studies. And the interesting thing about that is when VDOT gets these traffic impact studies, there is no time frame for VDOT to have to absolutely give you an answer. So if VDOT throws it back, the engineers are going to have to be very good at what they give to VDOT, because if VDOT throws it back, you just go back into the bottom of the pile. So that in itself is going to slow the pace of growth. And the economy, of course, in the near future is up in the air. Right now, you know, it almost can be a situation of you can almost predict what you ask for. You know, if you want to have a recession, you'll have a recession. But in our market, it doesn't appear that that's where we are. And there's still healthy things going on in all aspects of our economy. We have a very good and very diversified economy. Perhaps what's going to happen in the economy plus state law is going to allow us to catch our breaths and absorb the new retail space that's coming online. In summation, here's what I'm forecasting for March 2008 to March 2009. Vacancy rates will be slightly higher. Rental rates are going to be slightly lower. We're going to have record new construction. I don't believe any time in the history of our market have we seen 3.7 million square feet of retail space come online in 1 year. If you look at Lowe's and Home Depot as great examples of two retailers that have just come into a market of ours, 1.2 million, and just opened stores and stores and stores to compete with each other. Sometimes they put a store in a place, and another one's going to go in Ashland, another Lowe's, and there's going to be there's just a Home Depot across up at Norcross. So this battle goes on. But both of those companies in this environment nationally are slowing down their new store development. They have to. I think it's pretty hard to take a lot of people out of old properties when they're paying lower rents. I mean, if I were the retailer, I just did that analysis for a client of mine and actually was able to renegotiate, retailers, you might love this one, renegotiate their option. Their rate of rent increase on the option that has been being exercised is below the normal market increases of rent. So there are landlords that don't want to lose tenants. Yeah, I think it's going to take longer to lease some of the new product, and rental rates will have to come down in some of those projects. And we've seen that in some of the infill projects, some of the smaller infill projects in 2007, where rental rates were quoted in the upper 20s and ended up in the lower 20s. Interest rates 10 years from now are going to be at least 8.5% or higher. China and India have middle-class populations that they're growing, and that puts pressure on wages, and it puts pressure on infrastructure, and it puts pressure on what they have to do to satisfy their growing middle class. Therefore, even prices of goods made in those countries are going to go up. So our free ride, the free lunch that we've had in this country for the last about 15 years now is going to be history. Are there any incentives for the local merchants to go to the bigger centers? If you're a local merchant and your name is Saks and Shoes, there's an incentive. But for the smaller retailers, you have to put yourself where you need to be. And I'll tell you, I think small retailers have a tremendous advantage. You're more nimble. You can change. We were talking about this earlier. You can challenge a national chain because you can do things quicker. There's absolutely a place all over the place for small retailers. You just have to know what you're doing and do it well. Well, I'd like to thank everyone once again for having me here. And especially thank the retail merchants for inviting me back. Thank you all.